The great archive station hung silently in the darkness between stars, a massive structure of steel and light that had existed for 10,000 years. Inside its walls, the greatest minds of the galaxy worked in quiet focus, searching through the mysteries of ancient civilizations. The station rotated slowly around the dying star Vex 7, a sun that had burned for billions of years before beginning its final descent into darkness. Dr. Kang Min walked through the research halls with slow, careful steps. His body was made of crystalline matter that reflected the station's bright lights, creating small rainbows as he moved. He was old by the standards of his species, and he had spent his entire life studying the history of the galaxy. His 4 eyes, each one positioned on a different side of his head, allowed him to see in all directions at once. This was useful when studying ancient texts from many different cultures. Today, however, Dr. Kang Min faced a problem that frustrated him greatly. In the main research chamber, a massive holographic display showed strange symbols and marks. These were human writings, texts recovered from Earth, the small blue planet where humanity had first developed language and civilization. The symbols seemed to dance and shift in the light, but their meaning remained hidden. For 3,000 years, the greatest scholars in the galaxy had tried to understand these human scripts. Some said the writing system was too simple and therefore impossible to decode. Others claimed it was simply random marks with no real structure. A few brave researchers had suggested that perhaps humans were not intelligent enough to create a true language system. These researchers had won many awards for this conclusion. Dr. Kang Min had been given the responsibility of studying these texts one final time. If he could not unlock their meaning, the Galactic Council would officially declare them unsolvable and lock them away forever in the deepest archives. This decision would confirm what many already believed about humanity, that they were primitive, simple creatures without real intellectual power. He stood before the holographic display, rotating it with small hand movements, looking at the symbols from every angle. The scripts came from many different human cultures. Some looked like simple pictures. Others had long lines and curves. Some contained dots and marks arranged in careful patterns. Nothing made sense to him. "This is impossible," Dr. Kang Min said to himself, his voice creating soft harmonic tones in the air. His species communicated through sound waves that most other aliens found beautiful but difficult to understand. No intelligent system would be arranged this way. He adjusted the display again, and the ancient texts floated before him like ghosts from a dead world. According to the records, humans had used these symbols to write poetry, record history, and preserve their knowledge. But how could such random marks possibly serve these purposes? In the observation deck high above the main chamber, Ji-won watched the famous doctor work. She was young, only 28 years old, and her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot. Her eyes were sharp and focused, watching every movement Dr. Kang Min made. She had been accepted into the Galactic Research Program through merit and hard work, which was unusual for a human. Most humans who worked in the archives did simple tasks like organizing documents or cleaning equipment. Ji-won held a cup of water in her hands, her fingers tracing the rim as she thought. She had spent the last 5 years studying ancient human texts. She had read the original documents on Earth in libraries and museums. She understood the symbols better than almost anyone in the galaxy, better than most humans even. But the alien scholars had never asked her opinion. They saw her as too young, too inexperienced, and too human to understand complex academic matters. Now she watched Dr. Kang Min examine the texts with growing frustration. She could see that the doctor was looking at everything correctly, but understanding nothing. The problem was obvious to her, almost painfully obvious. But she knew that if she spoke up, no one would listen. Humans were not supposed to have good ideas. Humans were not supposed to help aliens understand important matters. But Ji-won had never been good at following the rules that others expected her to follow. This had made her life difficult many times, but it had also made her strong. She finished her water and stood up from her chair. Dr. Kang-min had returned to the holographic display for the 100th time that day. His frustration was beginning to show in the colors of his crystalline body. Where his form usually showed cool blues and purples, angry reds and oranges were starting to appear. He was about to call an end to his research for the day when he heard a small sound behind him. "Dr. Kang-min?" a soft voice called. "May I ask you a question?" The doctor turned all four of his eyes toward the voice. Ji-won stood there, dressed in the simple gray clothing that human researchers wore. She looked nervous, but her expression showed determination. Dr. Kang-min recognized her from previous research sessions. She was the human intern, the one who stayed quiet and worked hard. "Yes," Dr. Kang-min said, with a tone that suggested he was not very interested in what a human might have to say. "I was wondering if you had considered that the text might be oriented differently," Ji-won said carefully. She chose her words with great care. "In my studies, I found that many ancient human scripts contained directional markers that indicated which way was correct." Dr. Kang-min made a sound like distant wind chimes, which was his way of showing dismissal. "The text has been examined from every angle, every perspective, every possible arrangement. Your species created a failed language system. This is not a matter of perspective." Ji-won took a deep breath. She had expected this response. She had known that being dismissed was possible, even likely, but she had come this far, and she could not turn back now. "With respect, Dr. Kang-min, I think you might be looking at it upside down." For a long moment, no one spoke. The holographic display continued to shine, showing the same mysterious symbols that had confused the galaxy for 3,000 years. Then Dr. Kang-min did something unexpected. He laughed. His body created beautiful harmonic tones, a sound like bells ringing in a valley. It was a laugh of genuine amusement at what he saw as the ridiculous suggestion of a young human student. "You believe that the greatest minds of the galaxy have all failed to notice such a simple thing?" he asked. But even as he spoke, his crystalline fingers moved across the control panel. Even as he dismissed her idea, he was already preparing to implement it. Ji-won said nothing. She simply waited. Dr. Kang-min rotated the entire holographic display 180 degrees. The ancient human texts that had seemed random and meaningless suddenly shifted. The doctor went very still. The colors of his crystalline body stopped moving. For what felt like an eternity but was only a few seconds, he said nothing at all. Then, very slowly, Dr. Kang-min turned to look at Ji-won with all four of his eyes. For the first time in his long life, the great historian was looking at a human being with something that might have been respect. "Call the others," he said quietly, "and bring someone who speaks human languages. I believe we have a great deal of work to do." Dr. Kang-min's private office was a circular room at the top of the archive station's east tower. The walls were transparent, showing the vast darkness of space and the dying star Vex 7 hanging like a red jewel in the distance. The doctor preferred to work in solitude, with nothing but the stars and his own thoughts as company. This morning, however, he had requested that Ji-won meet him there. Ji-won felt nervous as she entered the office. She had barely slept during the night, her mind spinning with questions and doubts. What if she had been wrong? What if Dr. Kang-min had realized his mistake and now blamed her for wasting his time? What if she was about to be expelled from the research program for showing disrespect to a senior scholar? The doctor stood by the transparent wall, looking out at the stars. His crystalline body was now a calm blue color, which usually meant he was in a peaceful state of mind. When he turned to face Ji-won, his 4 eyes blinked slowly, one after another. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair made of the same crystal material as his own body. The chair was beautiful but uncomfortable, and Ji-won perched on it carefully. "I owe you an apology," Dr. Kang-min began, his voice creating soft harmonic tones. "Last night, I studied the corrected texts for 14 hours without stopping. What I have discovered is extraordinary." Ji-won said nothing. She simply listened. When the text is oriented properly, the symbols cease to be random marks. They become a complex, sophisticated system of communication. Each mark has meaning. The way the marks are arranged creates additional meaning. The direction in which they flow creates still more meaning. It is not a simple language, Ji-won. It is actually quite advanced. Dr. Kang-min walked to a panel on his desk and activated a holographic display. The human texts appeared again, but this time they made sense. The symbols told stories. They contained numbers and measurements. They showed relationships between ideas. In the ancient human texts, I found records of celestial navigation. These are humans who looked at the stars and developed methods to predict their movements. Here, he pointed to a section of text, they describe astronomical observations that would not be rediscovered by any other species for another 1,000 years. Ji-won leaned forward, looking at the ancient writing with new understanding. She could read some of it, though the ancient human language was different from the modern version she had learned. But the meaning was clear. "There is more," Dr. Kang-min continued. "I called for Min-ho, another human researcher, to join me at dawn. She confirmed these translations and added new insights I had missed. The texts contain not just observations but theories. Humans were attempting to understand the nature of the universe itself." Just as the doctor spoke these words, the office door slid open. Min-ho entered, carrying a tablet filled with data. She was slightly older than Ji-won, with short black hair and an intense expression. Min-ho had dedicated her life to studying ancient human philosophy and had always believed that humanity had more to offer than other species acknowledged. "Dr. Kang-min, I have completed the analysis you requested," Min-ho said, approaching the holographic display. "Look at these passages. They describe geometric principles and mathematical relationships. Some of these concepts were not formalized by other galactic civilizations until thousands of years later." The 3 of them stood together, looking at the brilliant light of the holographic display. For the first time in 3,000 years, the true meaning of human ancient texts was being revealed to the galactic community. The implications were staggering. "This changes everything," Ji-won said quietly. "This proves that humans were not primitive. This proves that we had intelligence and knowledge." "More than that," Min-ho added. "It proves that someone deliberately chose not to understand these texts. No one looked at them from the correct perspective. No one asked the simple question of whether they might be inverted." Dr. Kang-min's crystalline form shifted, showing colors of yellow and orange, colors that indicated deep thought and concern. "That is what troubles me most," he said. "I am not the first scholar to study these texts. Hundreds of researchers, perhaps thousands, have examined them over the centuries. How is it possible that none of them considered this simple possibility?" None of them had an answer to this question. They simply looked at each other, understanding that something significant had occurred, but not yet realizing how significant it truly was. Over the next several hours, Ji-won and Min-ho worked with Dr. Kang-min to translate more of the ancient texts. Their work desk became covered with notes and data. The holographic display glowed constantly, showing new discoveries almost every few minutes. They found evidence of human mathematical reasoning, human artistic achievement, and human philosophical thinking that was just as sophisticated as anything other species had created. By the time they finished, the Sunvex 7 had moved across the sky, and the colors of the office had changed from red to purple to blue. Dr. Kongmin sat back in his chair, his body now showing a soft green color that indicated satisfaction and peace. "You should present these findings," he said to Ji-won. "You were the one who saw what others could not see. You should be the one to share this discovery with the academic community." Ji-won and Min-ho exchanged a quick glance. They both knew that this was a tremendous honor, but also a tremendous risk. To present findings that contradicted 3,000 years of accepted belief was dangerous. There would be scholars who would resist, who would attack the research and try to prove it wrong. "What about you?" Ji-won asked carefully. "If I present this alone, no one will believe me. They will say I am just a human trying to make my species seem more important than it truly is." Dr. Kangmin stood and looked out at the stars once more. "Then we will present it together. I have spent my entire life studying the history of the galaxy. If I stand beside these findings and support their accuracy, then even the most resistant scholars will have to listen." Min-ho smiled slightly. "You realize this may damage your reputation. Many of your colleagues will see this as you admitting that you, too, failed to understand something obvious. Then my reputation will be damaged by the truth," Dr. Kangmin replied. "But truth is more important than reputation. Truth is the foundation upon which all knowledge is built. Without truth, everything we believe is simply an illusion." Ji-won felt something inside her shift. For the first time since arriving at the archive station, she felt seen and valued by someone from another species. She felt like her ideas mattered, like her perspective had worth. "When do we present?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Dr. Kangmin said. "Tomorrow? We will change how the galaxy understands humanity. Tomorrow, we will turn the world right side up." But what none of them knew, what they could not possibly have anticipated, was that powerful forces on the Galactic Council had already heard rumors of their discovery. And those forces were preparing to do everything in their power to suppress the truth that Ji-won, Min-ho, and Dr. Kong-min were about to reveal to the universe. The announcement was made during the official morning broadcast that reached every world in the Galactic Coalition. Dr. Kang-min stood before the cameras, his crystalline body reflecting the bright studio lights. Beside him were Ji-won and Min-ho, both looking nervous but determined. The broadcast had been announced weeks in advance, and millions of scholars and citizens tuned in to watch. Dr. Kang-min began his presentation with careful precision, explaining how the human ancient texts had been misunderstood for 3,000 years. He showed the corrected versions of the scripts and explained the mathematical and philosophical concepts they contained. He presented evidence of human astronomical knowledge and reasoning abilities. He concluded by stating clearly that humanity had demonstrated intellectual sophistication comparable to any other galactic civilization. For nearly an hour, the presentation continued. The evidence was compelling, the argument was sound, and the implications were revolutionary. When Dr. Kang-min finished, there was silence across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings from hundreds of different species sat in shocked recognition of what they had just witnessed. But this silence did not last long. Within hours, Chancellor Vox of the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Vox was not a scholar or a scientist. Vox was a politician, a member of the reptilian species known as the Krell. Vox had become leader of the council, not through brilliant thinking, but through careful management of power relationships and resources. The Chancellor was not pleased by the discovery. The council chamber was a vast, impressive room located at the very heart of the galactic government. It was a space designed to make those within it feel small and unimportant. Chancellor Vox sat in a throne-like chair at the center of the room, while dozens of other council members occupied seats arranged in a great spiral around the chamber. Dr. Kang-min was called to present his findings to the full council. He arrived expecting a professional discussion of the evidence and methods. Instead, he encountered something very different. "This presentation is premature," said Council Member Thrace, a creature of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell. "One discovery does not overturn 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge. One human-discovered perspective does not prove anything." "The evidence is clear," Dr. Kang Min replied calmly. The texts, when properly oriented, reveal only that one ancient human society had some understanding of mathematics," Chancellor Vox interrupted. "This does not prove that humans as a species have significant intellectual capacity. Every species has anomalies. It proves nothing about their overall nature or capability." Dr. Kang Min felt confusion rising within him. The logic that Vox presented was flawed. How could evidence of human intellectual achievement not prove human intellectual capacity? The answer seemed obvious to the scholar, but he could see in the faces of the council members that they were not interested in obvious logic. "Perhaps," Vox continued, "this young human researcher, Ji-Wan, manipulated the evidence to support her species. Perhaps she has falsified the data to make her people seem more important than they truly are." This accusation hit like a physical blow. Ji-Wan had been standing silently in the corner of the chamber, listening to the discussion. When Vox made this claim, she stepped forward. "I have not manipulated anything," Ji-Wan said, her voice steady despite her fear. "The evidence can be verified by anyone. You can examine the original texts yourself. You can see that the symbols are inverted." "A human's word is not sufficient proof," another council member said. "How do we know that you are not lying? Your species is known for emotional reasoning rather than logical thought." The meeting continued for hours, but the pattern remained the same. No matter what evidence Dr. Kang Min presented, the council found reasons to dismiss it or diminish its importance. They questioned his methods. They questioned Ji-Wan's honesty. They suggested that perhaps the texts had been created recently to deceive the council. They proposed that the mathematical principles shown in the texts were common knowledge that all species possessed. By the end of the meeting, it became clear to Dr. Kang Min and Ji-Wan that the council was not interested in the truth. They were interested in maintaining the status quo. They were interested in keeping humanity in a subordinate position. When the meeting finally ended, Dr. Kang Min walked with Ji-Wan through the corridors of the council building. Both of them felt exhausted and disheartened. "This was not what I expected," Ji-Wan admitted quietly. "I thought that if we had evidence, if we presented it clearly, that others would want to know the truth." "They do not want to know the truth," Dr. Kang Min said, his body now showing colors of deep blue and purple. "What they want is to maintain power. For 3,000 years, humanity has been positioned as intellectually inferior. This belief has allowed other species to control human resources, human labor, and human development. Changing this belief would change the entire structure of galactic society." That evening, Dr. Kang Min received a private communication from Chancellor Vox. The message was clear but delivered with carefully chosen words. If Dr. Kang Min continued to promote these discoveries, the council would question his academic credentials. They would suggest that his methods were flawed. They would recommend that he be removed from his research position and sent to study less controversial topics. For a scientist, this threat was severe. Without a prestigious position at the archive station, Dr. Kang Min would lose access to important research materials. He would lose the respect of his peers. He would, in essence, lose his career. Dr. Kang Min understood the message. He could choose to accept the council's pressure and disappear quietly. Or he could continue forward and face the destruction of everything he had built in his long life. He thought about this for a long time, looking out at the stars from his office window. Then he called Ji-Wan and Min-Ho. He also called Hai-In, his research partner from the advanced technological species of Vorath. Hai-In was young, brilliant, and had nothing to lose because the Vorath already had high status in the galactic community. "The Council will not accept this discovery willingly," Dr. Kang-min told them. "They have too much to lose. We will need to find another way to make them listen. We will need to find evidence so overwhelming, so undeniable, that they cannot possibly suppress it." "Where do we find such evidence?" Minho asked. Dr. Kang-min's crystalline body showed colors of orange and red once more. But this time, the colors were not the orange and red of frustration. They were the colors of determination and purpose. "The Council archives," he said quietly, "the restricted sections. If there is a conspiracy to suppress human advancement, there will be evidence of it in the deepest levels of the archive. There will be records. There will be documents. We must find them before the Council can destroy them." "That would be breaking protocol," Hai-In observed. "The restricted archives are restricted for a reason. They contain information the Council has chosen to keep private." "Yes," Dr. Kang-min agreed. "And now we must discover why they have kept this information private. We must discover what else they are hiding about humanity. We must discover the truth, no matter what it costs us." The four of them looked at each other in the dim light of Dr. Kang-min's office. Each of them understood that they had just crossed a line from which there was no turning back. They had moved from being respected researchers to becoming something else entirely. They had become seekers of a truth that powerful people did not want discovered, and the galaxy would never be the same. The restricted archives were located far beneath the main research level of the archive station. To reach them, one had to descend through 17 separate security levels, each one more heavily protected than the last. The Council had designed these security measures carefully, not to protect against outside invasion, but to prevent insider access to information that powerful figures wanted to keep hidden. But Dr. Kang-min had worked at the archive station for more than 200 years. He knew every passage, every corridor, and every security protocol. More importantly, Hai-In was a technological genius. The Vorath species had developed computers and electronic systems that were more advanced than most other galactic civilizations possessed. What seemed impossible to ordinary researchers became possible when Hai-In worked on the security systems. 3 days after the Council meeting, the four researchers entered the restricted archives together. They moved quietly, carefully, knowing that if they were discovered, they would face severe consequences. Ji-won's heart beat rapidly as they descended deeper into the station. The air grew colder with each level they passed. The lights became dimmer. The walls seemed to close in around them. "The deeper sections are here," Dr. Kang-min whispered, gesturing to a doorway that looked almost identical to dozens of others they had passed. "The Council has been organizing information in these vaults for thousands of years." Hai-In worked on the security panel for several minutes, her fingers moving rapidly across the controls. Sparks occasionally flew from damaged systems. Finally, the door slid open with a sound like ancient grinding stone. Inside was a vast chamber filled with data storage units. Some were ancient, made of physical materials that had degraded over time. Others were more modern, glowing softly with electronic light. It was a library of secrets spanning the entire recorded history of the Galactic Coalition. "What are we looking for?" Minho asked, looking around at the overwhelming amount of information. "Any records related to humanity," Dr. Kang-min said. "Any studies about human development or capability, any reports filed by researchers who studied ancient human texts." They worked methodically through the night, searching through endless files and records. Most of what they found was routine: administrative documents, resource allocation records, nothing significant. But then Ji-won discovered something unusual. A sealed file folder, labeled with a date from 700 years earlier. Inside was a research report written by a scholar named Thorne, who had apparently spent years studying human ancient texts. The report described in detail the same discoveries that Dr. Kang Min had just made. Thorne had identified the inverted orientation of the texts. Thorne had translated the mathematical and astronomical knowledge they contained. Thorne had concluded that humans possessed intellectual capacity equivalent to other galactic species. But the report contained one more element, a note from the Council. The note stated that Thorne's findings contradicted official Council policy regarding humanity. Therefore, the findings should be classified as restricted information. Thorne was offered a choice: accept a comfortable retirement position where he would never research again or face public accusation of scientific fraud. Thorne had chosen retirement. "They have known this all along," Ji-won said, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "They have known for centuries that humans were not inferior. They chose to hide it anyway." They continued searching. And what they found was worse than any of them had anticipated. There were dozens of similar reports, all reaching the same conclusion, all suppressed by the Council. Some researchers had accepted the retirement offer. Others had been publicly discredited. One report mentioned that a researcher named Korun had simply disappeared after making the discovery, with no explanation ever provided to the academic community. But then Hai-In found something even more significant. Deep within the oldest section of the restricted archives, they discovered a document from the original founders of the Galactic Council. It was written in an ancient language that few could read, but Dr. Kang Min could understand it. As he read the words, his crystalline body began to glow with colors of red and orange that expressed emotions of shock and horror. "What is it?" Min-ho asked urgently. Dr. Kang Min translated slowly, carefully making sure that each word was accurate. "This is a memo from the first council members, written more than 5,000 years ago. They discuss the threat that a technologically advancing humanity might pose. They write about the importance of maintaining humanity in a state of dependency. They specifically recommend that any evidence of human intellectual capability be suppressed." The memo went on to explain the reasoning. A humanity that believed itself to be inferior would not pursue advanced technology or space exploration. A humanity that saw itself as dependent on other species would not develop independent political power. A humanity that accepted its own limitations would never become competition in the galactic marketplace. "This was deliberate," Ji-won said quietly. "This was planned. It was not just prejudice or natural misunderstanding. It was intentional suppression." "There is more," Dr. Kang Min continued, reading further into the document. "They established protocols for handling researchers who discovered the truth. They created methods for suppressing findings. They set up the system that we just encountered with Thorne and others." Then the door behind them slid open. A figure stood in the doorway, a tall, thin being whose species was known as the Architects. His name was Rai-sung, and he was a senior archivist with authority over the restricted sections. For a long moment, everyone in the chamber froze. They had been discovered. "I will call security," Dr. Kang Min said, preparing to face his punishment. But Ri-sung did not move. Instead, he looked at the document in Dr. Kang Min's hands, and an expression of sadness crossed his features. "I have worked in these archives for 300 years, Ri-sung said slowly. "I have kept these secrets. I have helped the Council maintain this suppression. I told myself that I was following orders, that I was not responsible for the decisions of those in power. But I always knew that this was wrong." Ri-sung walked toward them and looked at the ancient memo. "My species understands many things. We understand mathematics and physics. We understand the nature of time and space. But we do not seem to understand justice or truth. Or perhaps we understand them, and we simply choose to ignore them when it is convenient." "You could report us," Hai-In said. "I could," Ri-sung agreed, "but I will not. Instead, I will tell you what else you need to know. There is a vault on this level, deeper than anywhere you have gone. Inside that vault are the most important documents of all. They are the original Earth texts, the ones that were removed from our research archives centuries ago. The Council has kept them hidden because they contain evidence of human achievement so profound that it is impossible to deny. Ri-Sung led them deeper into the restricted archives, past security systems that seemed designed to be impassable. But Ri-Sung had access codes that overrode the protections. Finally, they reached a chamber that appeared to be sealed completely from outside access. These texts were translated generations ago, Ri-Sung explained. They contain human poetry that rivals the greatest works in the galaxy. They contain human art concepts that influenced advanced civilizations. They contain human philosophy that predicted scientific discoveries by thousands of years. They are proof, undeniable proof, that humans were always the equals of any species in this galaxy. He opened the vault, and light poured out. Inside were thousands of documents, all preserved perfectly, all hidden from the galaxy for centuries. "Why are you helping us?" Ji-won asked. Ri-Sung looked at her with eyes that showed great wisdom and great sorrow. "Because I am tired of keeping lies alive. Because I am old and have little to lose. Because your species has been punished for 3,000 years for a crime it did not commit. And because the truth matters more than anything else in this universe." As they worked through the night to gather the most important documents, Ji-won realized something important. The suppression of human achievement was not just about maintaining power. It was about fear. The Council members feared that if humans were recognized as equals, the entire system of galactic society would change. And they were right. The Council's security forces began their search exactly 24 hours after Dr. Kang Min and his team removed the restricted documents from the archive vault. Hae-in had detected the initial security alert while they were still gathering materials, and she gave them only a few hours of warning before the station's security systems would be fully activated against them. They moved quickly through the corridors of the archive station, carrying data storage devices filled with thousands of years of suppressed information. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuing guards. The archive station, once a quiet place of peaceful research, had become a place of danger and desperation. "The broadcast center is on the western level," Ri-Sung told them as they ran. The archivist moved more slowly than the others, his ancient body struggling with the physical demands. But his mind was sharp, and his knowledge of the station's layout was perfect. "If we can reach the transmission equipment, we can broadcast directly to every world in the Galactic Coalition. No one will be able to stop the signal once it is sent." "Security forces are blocking the main corridors," Hae-in said, monitoring her portable computer as they ran. "We will need to use the service passages. They are smaller and harder to patrol, but they will take longer." "We do not have longer," Dr. Kang Min said. His crystalline body was now showing colors of dark red and orange, expressing fear and urgency. "If we are captured now, all of this evidence will disappear. The truth will be buried again." They descended through 3 levels using maintenance tunnels that were barely wide enough for them to pass through. Ji-won's shoulders scraped against the walls, leaving small marks. Minho led the way, her understanding of the station's systems nearly as good as Ri-Sung's own. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew closer, then faded, then grew closer again. Finally, they reached the broadcast center. The room was filled with massive transmission equipment that sent signals throughout the galaxy. News broadcasts, scientific reports, administrative communications, all were transmitted from this location. But the center was guarded, and getting past the guards seemed impossible. Hae-in studied the security systems from a distance, her brilliant mind working rapidly through possible solutions. "There is a maintenance access point on the eastern wall. If I can reach it, I can override the security systems from inside." but I will need at least 10 minutes of time without distraction. I will provide that distraction, Ri-sung said simply. Before anyone could protest, the old archivist walked directly toward the security guards. He was immediately challenged, but he showed them his access credentials. Ri-sung was a trusted member of the council's administrative staff, someone authorized to be in restricted areas. The guards allowed him through. As Ri-sung walked past them and deeper into the broadcast center, he activated an alert on the station's communication system. He reported a false security breach on the opposite side of the station, directing available guards to respond to that location. For the first time in his long career, Ri-sung was actively working against the council's interests. Hae-in used those precious 10 minutes to reach the maintenance access point and begin overriding the security systems. Sparks flew from her portable device as it interfaced with the station's ancient equipment. Her fingers moved with perfect precision, entering codes and commands into systems designed decades ago by her own species. Then the security forces arrived at the broadcast center, but it was too late. Hae-in had opened the inner doors. Dr. Kong-min, Ji-won, and Min-ho rushed inside. "How long until security gets through the doors?" Ji-won asked urgently. "Approximately 3 minutes," Hae-in responded. "The broadcast can be initiated immediately, but we need someone to speak, someone to be the face of this revelation." Ji-won and Min-ho looked at each other. They understood what was being asked. One of them would need to stand before the camera, knowing that this action would make them a target. The council would respond to this betrayal with whatever force they possessed. "I will do it," Ji-won said before Min-ho could speak. "I am the one who started this. I am the one who first suggested that the text might be oriented differently. This is my responsibility." There was no time for argument. Min-ho helped Ji-won to the broadcast chair and secured the data connections that would display the evidence behind her. Dr. Kong-min reviewed the presentation one final time, making sure that the evidence was organized clearly and logically. Ri-sung stood at the door, monitoring the security forces as they tried to break through. 30 seconds until they break the lock," Ri-sung called out. "Broadcast is ready," Hae-in confirmed. "You are live across the entire galaxy in 3, 2, 1. Ji-won looked directly into the camera, and suddenly, billions of beings across hundreds of worlds could see her. She was young, she was human, and she was about to change the course of galactic history. "My name is Ji-won," she began, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "I am a human researcher, and I have discovered something that the Galactic Council has spent thousands of years trying to hide from you." Behind her, the holographic display activated, showing the ancient human texts in their proper orientation. She began explaining what they had found: the mathematical knowledge, the astronomical observations, the philosophical concepts that humans had developed centuries or thousands of years before other species even discovered these principles. The security forces broke through the inner door. Ri-sung threw himself into their path, delaying them for a few more crucial seconds. During those few seconds, Ji-won revealed the suppressed research reports. During those few seconds, she showed evidence of the conspiracy that had lasted for 5,000 years. Dr. Kang-min had reached the transmission controls and locked them, making it impossible to interrupt the broadcast. No matter what the security forces did now, the signal would continue to reach every world in the galaxy until Ji-won finished her presentation. "This suppression was not an accident," Ji-won continued, her words now reaching trillions of beings. "It was intentional. It was planned. The Council discovered thousands of years ago that humans possessed intellectual capability equal to any other species. They chose to hide this truth because a humanity recognized as equals would threaten their power." She showed the memo from the original Council founders. She showed the retirement offer that had been given to researcher Thorne. She showed the list of researchers whose careers had been destroyed for discovering the same truth. Today, I am telling you that humanity was never inferior. We were never primitive. We were never less intelligent or less capable than any other species in this galaxy. We were simply held down by those who benefited from our suppression. As security forces closed in on the broadcast center, as alarms sounded throughout the station, Ji-won delivered her final statement. I am telling you that today this changes. Today the truth becomes impossible to deny. Today humanity stands equal in this galaxy. The security forces reached the broadcast controls, but it was too late. The entire presentation had been transmitted. Hundreds of billions of beings across the Galactic Coalition had seen the evidence. They had heard Ji-won's words. They had learned about the conspiracy. In the moments that followed, something remarkable began to happen. Across every world in the galaxy, people began to react. Some with shock, some with anger, some with realization that everything they had believed about humanity was wrong. Some, in fact, with shame. The shame of having accepted a lie for so long. Chancellor Vox watched the broadcast from his office in the council building. His reptilian features twisted in fury, but his rage came too late. The truth was already spreading. Like light, it could not be put back into darkness. As security forces arrested Dr. Kang-min, Ji-won, Min-ho, and Hai-in, dragging them from the broadcast center, they all understood that they had accomplished what they set out to do. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. And in that single moment of transmission, the course of human history changed forever.